Alright, welcome to another edition of What the Fuck Happenings Here. Yes, Brain in Mendham. So, context. So we've talked recently, in the last 3 or 4 weeks, about the fact that our origin is just this material universe. The real universe is a bunch of little tiny electrons and protons swimming in a sea of pushing force, you could say, and all of that stuff just becomes like magnets. You could just say it's a bunch of little magnets floating around in space, and they all can coalesce into solider objects, more compressed objects, and they get hot because of that, catch fire, create suns, blah blah blah. You can go through the whole thing. All right, and that's where we're coming from, is that universe where there's just 100 of these little atoms, and the atoms end up arranging into compounds, billions of compounds, billions of ways of arranging atoms into things, and one of them will end up being a DNA molecule, and the DNA molecule end up being part of a cell, and blah, evolution takes place, and it makes these machines. And that's all we are, is a machine. And there's no you inside of you. There's just your brain, and your brain is manufacturing what we're experiencing as being alive. But we use the word alive to describe the little squiggly things that aren't brain enabled, that aren't experiencing anything. They are much more machiney. We're just machine plus brain. It's just another machine running the machine. So it's just another level of organization, and it's all programmed, blah 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 blah. Okay, so then the second idea to understand is once you're in this condition, you have this brain that does this thinking and feeling thing. Thinking really good, feeling troublesome, because it makes you into a selfish asshole. It can be understood that yes, we're just all machines, and it's just like Coke bottles in a factory or something. To say one Coke bottle is really important and all the rest of the Coke bottles don't matter would be ridiculous. There's nothing about our innate function that makes your feelings more important than mine, or my feelings more important than yours. It's just a fact that the enemy, so to speak, isn't you feeling bad. It's any feeling thing feeling bad. We're really playing, obviously, a multiplayer game, because the value isn't yourself. The value is sentient brain being relieved of torture and harm. That's what you want, to be relieved of any tortures and harms. You want them prevented, ideally. And it's the same thing all the other organisms likewise need. So if you are feeding your comfort with something else's torture, that's not likely to be productive. Meat eaters. It's just a fact. So, I'm sad, I'm sorry that the truth sucks, but yeah, the truth sucks. Okay, we live in a sucky circumstance where we have some bad habits, frankly, and it's that simple when it comes to eating animals. It's more complicated when it comes to torturing them for medicine, because again, you're arguing that somehow you're worth it. And it's a real open question. I don't even know if it's open. That there really can't be any defense for, even if you said the animal sentience was in some diminished state, you can't annihilate it. Just, people talk to their dogs all the time. They know, they know their dog has a welfare, a state of comfort and discomfort. So it's just sort of ridiculous to think all these other animals don't feel anything. And so what are you worth? You're worth 10 of them? How many of them are you allowed to torture for your gratification or for your protection or your safety? And again, I'd say, oh yeah, sure, it's an open question. No, it's not really an open question. It's, yeah. There's just rationalizations and excuses. There's no logic or intelligence applied to answering the question in any other way than, yeah, that just sucks. Find another way. Torture is not acceptable. Anyway, okay. Now the whole life and death thing, that gets a little more complicated because obviously once you're dead, yeah, you can't really be hurt. So it's really the process of dying that sucks. And obviously the only part that matters to people is their sense that they had something important to finish and they needed something to do. You know, they had to do a few things. They had to clean up a few things before they were dead. And so they died inopportunely, okay, because they weren't cleaned up and finished. But the fact is, yeah, death is pretty harmless if you just do it right. You do it badly, it's really harmful. And then the idea, it's an idea, okay, that there's something taken from a person if they cease to exist. Like if the planet were to blow up in a millisecond right now, you know, gamma ray burst in space, blew it right up. What rational argument could we make to say, oh, I was robbed, you know, oh, I was, you know, in some way harmed? There's no possible way I could make that argument that I felt anything, that I knew anything about it, that it was in any way harmful. And anything I was going to do that was good was only going to be good if there were other people still around to do it for, or animals to do it for. So there's nothing for me to fix. That is, everything that was broken is now no longer existing. Then I don't have to fix anything. Then I can't argue that, oh, I had a whole agenda. I had a whole story I wanted to finish writing. No, there was no need to write the story then. So it'd be very hard for me to argue if I could survive being killed. You know, that my annihilation was some kind of tragedy. It just would make it. It's just a very hard argument to make. Anyway, so that's sort of our circumstance. So you know, I've been talking about thinking and I've been talking about feelings. So feelings is where the value comes from. That's where you can understand that the only thing we're really playing for is feelings. People do what they do to feel better about the world they exist in, and part of that is based on how they understand things to be better or worse, and a big part of it though is how they feel about it, how comfortable they are. Does the world look tilted to them? Is it distorted? Is it in focus? Is it symmetrical? And these things become very subjective in terms of conditioned emotion. So there are people walking down the street, let's say, with a hairdo or something. You know, I see this stuff, and you're just saying, what the fuck could they possibly be thinking? You know, and it's completely subjective in a way. I mean, I hate to say it's completely subjective because there's just a certain logic to symmetry and balance, and those things are so common in like 90% of people that you just say, okay, you know, 90% of people are going to say, what the fuck? You know, it's going to happen because it is just so incomprehensibly anti-aesthetically reasonable in the realm of normal, average, the majority, whatever you want to say. It's just such an ugly fucking color, so to speak. But anyway, it's just like, you know, how did their brain think, great idea, look ridiculous, it'll get me somewhere. Yeah, no, you're just like, no, yeah. But anyway, they obviously have as an aesthetic, you know, perversion, and we know that there's certain, there's 2% of the population, whatever, that want to be gerbils, and there's 1.7% that want to be whatever, gnats, and butterflies and fig trees. People want to be all kinds of wacky shit because they're dissatisfied in their life and they're just picking something to blame. So they go looking around and say, what can I blame? Because I'm not, I'll blame that thing. It's weird anyway. Or something like that. Life is, and look, and they go through the whole thing and then they say, oh yeah, well, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, well, okay, it isn't all that great. Because it really doesn't fix the real problem, which is living on a meat grinder, living on the surface of meat grinder and just waiting for your turn to get ground up. And it slowly gets to you. I mean, it's like the earth has a kind of quicksand and you're just slowly sliding. As you get older, you're seeing it. I'm sliding, I'm sliding, I'm sliding. And you can hear the blades, and it gets louder and louder. Clunk, 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 clunk. Ouch, ouch, ouch. You hear, you can sense the ominousness becomes more and more obvious. Kind of like in a Poeskian kind of way. The creepy gets creepier and creepier. And it becomes just, really obvious. So, as a senior citizen, I can dispel you of any myths about golden years and how it's all just so wonderful and pile of shit. Just absolute nonsense propaganda, where people are just pretending, I'll be stoic. They're just playing this stoic, oh, you can't hurt me game. And because yes, there's just nothing positive besides the fact that you have this extra perspective in terms of knowing where a lot of the trapdoors are, and feeling good that you're not stepping in the trapdoors anymore because you already did it and been there, done that. You felt stupid. And, now you feel superior because you have a little bit more knowledge. But there's all the rest is downside, because that more knowledge comes with you've seen more people in nursing homes, and you've seen more things that are just so hard to look at and watch. And you have all that stuck in your head, these really bleak bits of life. And they're hard to see past. I mean, they're almost like a cataract. The bad memories just start limiting your vision to see any cupcakes, to see anything, worth chasing anymore. And it just becomes kind of obvious that, yes, I was in a trap all along and I just didn't know it. You were just circling the mousetrap kind of thing. And eventually, yes, a few times you get away with the peanut butter. You steal it. You lick it off gracefully enough and you don't get your neck broke. But eventually, it's going to get you. And it won't be over quick. And it'll, be quite horrible and stressful and nasty and awful and all that kind of crap. So anyway, that's the, that's the context, trying to get you out of any kind of, let's not talk about spirituality or aliens or gods or some other poofy bullshit, and just try to deal with the fact that, yes, you're just a robotic machine conditioned by an environmental and a culture, teachers, parents, blah, 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 events. It's fucked with you in all kinds of different ways. I could argue, for my own personal experience, I was ruined by the fact that as a kid I had an inferiority complex, and I pretty much ended up associating people with the problem, because if I was alone, I could go play golf or I could go do something alone. There's nobody to judge me. There's nobody to criticize. There's nobody to find fault. Except me, and and I'm pretty. I was, I sometimes pretty hard on myself, but I could accept my ridicule, and because I guess I could accept my judgment, okay, because I knew it was fair, and I guess I just got judged unfairly so many times. Like somebody else picks a fight, and you get blamed for the fight or something. You know, you punch back, and somehow you're the bad guy. You know, that kind of thing happened way too often. And so, well, anyway, the fact is that I ended up associating people as the problem. You know, if I could just take the people out of the scene, I didn't mind working in the restaurant. I didn't mind being here. I didn't mind being to get rid of the people. I'm fine, and that kind of thing. And so my brain, you know, made this really bad for my future kind of conditioned response where people became nauseating and troublesome for me, and made me feel like shit. And so, you know, just by existing. And it's really hard to get through your life that way. So I have had a very hard time getting through my life. But anyway, so and so I have that. You also have some kind of the same bullshit. Some kind of, like, you love to rub tanks or something. Or some kind of American flags make you all wet down there. Some kind of bullshit triggers, you know, mechanisms where you have this emotional thing, okay, that's either sucking you in, attracting you, or repelling you hard. And so there's some things that you can't stand, whether it's conformity or like these people with the hair thing, you know, or they just hate wearing the uniform, so they just wear whatever is an anti-uniform, you know, just some way to be anti. And it gives them a sense of immunity, gives them a sense of I have a freedom from what they fear, or you know, what emotionally triggers them. So that's what we're fighting through. Is that, you know, the simple argument is, okay, we're robotic, programmed. The culture gets intelligent, the memes get more and more intelligent. Now, obviously, I'd argue that science has really fucked up a lot of that stuff, physics in particular. Almost physics exclusively. I mean, the other sciences are pretty good. Physics is a real shitty one. But anyway, and so it's just this conversation about the fact that, of course, matter got sophisticated and complicated. And one of the obvious complications to create is a calculator that, you know, can figure out things and you know, tell the difference between right and left and predict outcomes and do all of that kind of stuff. And that's why we have that capacity. But it's attached to this, you know, I don't know, this insect. I mean, it's attached to something old and crude and stupid, okay, which is this identity emotional thing that has to function inside of you know, the group, the tribe, and it has to play alpha and beta games, and it has to do all that kind of crap, and all of that has really screwed with our psychology. Still is screwing, let's just say, with our psychology. The fact that we have to play these emotional games to maintain civilizations in the past. It's the only way your family or your tribe could be victorious. It has had to have these mechanisms that balanced power and that didn't turn you all into sissies or something. I mean, it had to pull more productivity out of you in a way, you could argue. Had to make, even though your life got, your ambition made your life harder, you needed to have that striving for grabbing as much as you can. The ants and the grasshopper kind of thing. You had to have that ant mentality of collect it all, you know. So just in case it's a cold winter and there's no food, you have it. And people became that kind of hoardy, control freaky, because you had to be those things to keep your territory. Somebody's going to take it if you don't keep it, you know. Anyway, so that's why we have all this emotional mush, and it's just so hard to navigate around it with just thoughts. Just thoughts saying, "Don't be emotional." Well, yeah, sure, okay. No, it doesn't work. Doesn't work very well. And there are some things that can't work at all on. Like I said, I can't just fix my anxiety disorder by saying, "Don't have one." Stop having an anxiety disorder. Oh, okay. Yeah, no, it's not that easy. It's like I compared it before to vertigo. Once you've got it, you can't just think it away. You can't just, I'm not afraid of heights. Well, go ahead and climb a ladder. You'll find out you are, asshole. So, you can't just think it away. You have to recondition your brain. And that's a really hard process because it involves you creating a fake world where somehow you enjoy doing something you hate. And your brain isn't fooled by faking it, okay? It just doesn't, it knows the difference between "I'll just smile and say it's all okay" and you actually being happy. So conditioning is tough because you really do have to make sure you don't have any unpleasant accidents and actually reinforce the negative, because then it's even a harder task to get rid of it. So anyway, all of this premise was leading to some conversation about conflict, because that's something I'm dealing with a lot. And you're saying, there really shouldn't be all this conflict between people, because they all, like they all have some common ambition that is the good people anyway. To improve things, and that is the the idea. And there shouldn't really be enough room for all of this diversity regarding what the definition of improvement is, or a good thing. But then it gets deeper, because the real truth is that usually these conflicts are made out of a character difference. Where somebody, for a conflict to really provoke you, it has to be that the wrong is an insult. I mean, it's like, it's so overtly rude and nasty that you'd say, well, they can't get away with that. And so it's your ego resisting their being dissed, that makes you fight back. When you think they said it on purpose or something, I mean, sometimes you can misunderstand somebody. You can say, oh, okay, I get it. You were not dissing me because blah, blah, blah. So, there's some circumstance. You didn't know I was behind you, so when you did this, this, or this, you didn't know I was there, so that's why you did it, and I thought you did it on purpose. Some kind of misunderstanding. So I'm talking about things that aren't misunderstandings, where it's just clear these people have some kind of different values, and they're not acceptable, because they're just so obnoxious to something you say. Just has to be. There has to be this common understanding that, do unto others as you have others do unto you. This idea that you can't be duplicitous and hypocritical. And you certainly can't cheat somebody and steal from them and think, well, that's okay, and so the real part, though, is the brain says, the smart part of me says, okay, there's probably no fight worth fighting, beyond, these big subjects, the big philosophy ideas, and any trivial stuff between individuals. Well, you just ought to let it go. It's not productive to waste your emotional energy, your sentient welfare on being upset. But like I said, I can say that, but it goes back to there's a part of the monkey that's there's a part of us that is the monkey. I mean, it just cannot not have some sort of, male reaction. You could argue, some kind of I'm entitled to this minimum. If I'm not going to get this minimum, fighting words kind of argument almost. And it's just that they're so triggery that you can't, even though it's probably the right thing, you can't do it. Even though I guess I should move to the right, it's like a squirrel in the middle of the streets, and it's like the squirrel should know, never stop in the middle of the street. You always stop on halfway to one side, a third or a quarter, and then you'll always know which way to run. Never get trapped in that middle. I'd sort of argue that some of these emotional conflicts between what your pride or your dignity demands and what your intelligence is saying, it's just left and right. They're both pulling hard. And so I don't really have anything to say on that subject. So that's sort of the interesting part, besides saying that it exists, and I haven't figured out how to deal with it. I'm still a squirrel, that's just can't, just can't. I can't be controlled by my intelligence entirely, and I need to feel that visceral fight for right, for the dignity of the truth, even. So I'm pleased that I'm emotional about something like the truth instead of it just being about me. But the downside is the part that's getting me to that is just a me thing. It's just a stupid brain being triggered by things that shouldn't be. And are they important enough to fix? Oh. Yeah, so it's just, and you really almost can't say that something's not important enough to fix, because all of it that you leave broken just means that somebody else is going to have to fix it in the future. Somebody else is going to have to be aggrieved and fucked over and go through the whole process, and and they're going to have to make the other decision to fight and fix, where rationalized yourself an excuse to stay out of the rough sea, something like that. Anyway, all right, so that's the end of the video. So I guess I'll just retrace. I got to the top and I just walked out the other side of the hill, and I'll just say some more of the same things. Yeah, so it's just, you're in a world, we're in this world, we're all in this together, in the sense that, yes, we all just arrived here and we're going to try to play the best game we can. I'm assuming everybody listening to this video is trying to play the game, the life game, well, and that's why they're listening to videos like this. The catch is the only way to play it well is to recognize that there's 8 billion people and you're only 1/8 billionth, of the value. All of them are valuable, and you can't vampire. You can't gain your comfort out of their misery and call that a reasonable action. And that's the part, like I said, we all should be able to agree. That's the circumstance we're in. What do we do about it? How do we improve it for the next players? Because the next players are the same as us. They have the same value mechanism. They're the same thing. Okay, yeah, they're going to be very different than you or me. But what they're doing is going to be exactly the same, which is trying to comfort a complex emotional machine. A machine that isn't, that is just, it has a smart part and I mean, some of your emotions are not stupid, but I mean, they're narrow in their view. So an emotionally, an intuitive, you could even say, or a simple mind versus the complex, better mind. And, we all have to balance that and try to interact with our best mind, you could argue, and try to solve the problems by not making it worse, by doing some silly monkey shit, throwing poo or whatnot. Yeah. All right. So I'll take a pause and be back for more. All right, back. So I was thinking about the statement I use a lot, deserve. Deserve. People, you should get what you deserve. That's my attack rhetoric. I'd be yelling it as I go down the battlefield. In some way, as just a humiliating gesture. I'm not afraid. It's almost like invoking a god in the sense that you're willing to be scrutinized by that standard and judged. So I would argue that, yes, I could say overall I was always a nice guy. I was always very generous. Anybody needed something, I would try to do what I could. I always felt good being useful. That always appealed to me. So if I could be used as a wrench, fine. If I could be, if I had utility, that was always something that just charmed me. It made me feel good because I felt disconnected and useless and broken and insufficient, so those were, I had powerful personal incentive besides having some reasonable knowledge that, at least from my own family life, that yes, what I did mattered because other people could be hurt by it. And so I kind of learned that lesson early somehow and knew that you had to give to get, and all of that kind of stuff. You had to be a reasonably fair participant. And then in my teens, that got even further, even more draconian, you could argue, in the sense of recognizing that even though I was pretty functional emotionally in that sense, that I wanted to be useful. I wanted to be a good guy, a white hat, something that comes to the rescue, not something that makes a mess. I wanted to fix things, I guess I could just argue. I liked it. I enjoyed doing it just because it was fun to figure out why it was broken. And then figuring out how to undo whatever happened to make it that way. So these are all good analogies. So I'm just saying, so this word means something to me personally in the sense that I always thought, well, I sort of got ripped off. I deserve better than this. The life I ended up with was tough and, unpleasant and struggle. And, but that's besides the point of just recognizing that this is a very powerful concept, this deserve thing. And so in some of these circumstances, it's what bothers me the most, is that people don't get what they deserve. And so I could argue in these arguments with the trolls, the anti-ers, the whatever they are, they cheat the argument so egregiously, and they're willing to throw free speech, on the altar of their petty resentments and hatreds towards me. They'll actually be part of the engine that makes people pay for free speech. The cheaters, the fake news, the propaganda, the lies, the distortions, all of that crap, and they'll end up playing in that sewage. Supporting that to get to me. And that's their biggest crime. That's the part that really takes you from, okay, fuck it, who cares, to you have to start caring. Because as long as people keep getting away with that, if that's how they win, all right, then you've broken reward and punishment, because now deserve doesn't have anything to do with it. It's really annoying. And they, like I said, they've overtly done this. The whole idea that I should be investigated by the police, that I should this and I should do that, and all of this bullshit. I mean, being swatted a couple of times, and it's just bullshit. There's no excuse for making people pay for speaking honestly their opinions. I mean, that's just too evil almost. That's just evil, frankly. You want honesty out of people, and that's the part where they're breaking the basic thing that makes the fight fair. It makes it possible to get into the ring, because the other guy doesn't have a gun. And he doesn't have brass knuckles, and he doesn't. You can't go into the ring not knowing. And they're just creating this environment where, nobody honest will do anything. Because they're going to be cheated and they're going to be stolen from, and they're not going to get a fair fight. And that's a really dangerous thing to do to a civilization, is to, break the very idea of a civil argument. So, I could give you the examples where, I've made videos talking about subjects that some of them are kind of sensitive, like pedophilia, and I've made no argument defending it in any way, ever molesting a kid, any kid getting harmed. I've said, go ahead, death penalties. I don't, you can't, acting on your impulses that are bad is not the subject. So the only thing I was talking about is the fact that they exist. And what do you do about it? How do you pull their teeth, so to speak? And my simple arguments were around that frame of just recognizing also that for every one pedophile who acts out, attempts or perpetrates a molestation, there's probably 100 that don't. Maybe it's 1,000, because the fact is, youth is attractive. There's all kinds of triggers. I don't think any, I don't think an honest male would say that, oh yeah, as women get older, they get so hot. I don't think that's the argument that can be made. And obviously it goes into this realm of being, quite perverse, in the sense that there's people who molest infants and stuff, which, that I'm not really talking about. But I'm just saying, it's a general theme. It is ridiculous for somebody to say, well, why did that 75-year-old man marry the 18-year-old girl? Duh. What do you mean? That's a why question? You're really ridiculous, right? Would he have married a 15-year-old if he could? Yeah, he probably would. So let's not pretend. That's all. I just expressed my honest opinion. That it's just kind of silly to think of it as being all that pervertist in the first place, and second, it's all about action, not anything else. There's nothing intrinsically. The thoughts aren't a crime. The fantasies aren't a crime. The action is a crime. All right. So we can all be kind of, you could say about a 75-year-old who marries an 18-year-old girl and just say, oh, come on, aren't you being kind of a shithead? You're setting her up for a lot of nothing, right? Or did you just buy her? And wouldn't you think maybe it's better for you to be a nice little mentor and try to find her the right husband? Maybe you could do that if you really loved her. Find her a future, because watching you die is not going to be much of one. So even if you could get her to really love you, have you done her a favor? Because she's going to be a widow. you're going to have kids at 75. The men who do that, it's just kind of disgusting. Just setting it up so your teenage son can watch you die. Fuck you. That's a really ugly definition of love. So I'm just saying that the point is that okay, these people who want to make these counter arguments are saying that somehow I defended doing these things, doing these behaviors. I didn't defend any of it. I just defended ways of mitigating against it and preventing it. And I specifically talked about just all the old porn. It's no point in burning it. Okay, those crimes have already been committed, and if they can mitigate against a future crime, then you might as well use them for that purpose. Don't take your power away. Keep every tool that's available. And it's just stupid, okay, to pretend that you have some reason to be absolutely certain that you can't mitigate, in the sense that you can't teach a person how to deal with their desires and moderate them. Live a fantasy life instead of a real one. Not expect reality to conform to their desires. And the fact is that that's what happened to a lot of people. A lot of people they can't make reality conform to what they desire, see themselves as, or see the world they want to be in. And you have to have some capacity to recognize that, well, that's not going to happen. So I have to create my own little matrix, where I can go vacation. I could use an example, Al Bundy, from Married with Children. He would vacation by just putting a barrier around himself, the couch, and the TV, and say, okay, yeah. So he just goes to another world, not real. And it's a perfectly rational, acceptable way of dealing with the fact that not everything about your construction is going to be compatible with the world you're in. And the things you can fix are those kind of things. You can use tricks to get past some of these mechanisms. And I would argue that your gratification sexually is really a head game. It really is just a lot of nonsense. And all you need to do is lower the tension here and raise the tension. You just need to have a perspective where you recognize that maybe it ain't all that. It's like if you if you had tickets to Disneyland and then they said, oh, we're going to close Disneyland for a week, you could just rationally say to yourself, well, yeah, it's going to be a big hassle. I hate the bus trip. There's all kinds of sticky shit all over the place. Yeah, but fuck it. People are noisy and loud and smelly. I'll probably catch, I'll get tuberculosis or something. Fuck it. So you can come up with nice rational statements, right? Nice perspective that make it understood that, yeah, it only lasts one little tiny day. It's a stupid little image in your head. That's all you're going to walk away with. You might as well just take the picture, because the moment won't be durable. It's like I went to the Grand Canyon. I stood on the edge. I walked on the rail. I did all that stuff in one day. And that's all I have, though, is pictures of it, so to speak. I mean, I can't go back and be there. I can only go, well, yeah, I have a picture in my brain. My picture has an image. That's all it has. I've seen the biggest waterfalls. I've seen all kinds of stuff. I've been there, saw it. All I got in my head is a picture. I can't do any better than the picture. That's it. That's what my memory is. It's a picture. Period. I can't feel it anymore. I can't. I can pretend. Oh, the wind's blowing. I can pretend something, but it's really not the same. So that's the way life works. So anything you do is just fleeting anyway, and you might as well just find a picture of it. Go find a picture of it and say, okay, that's as good as it's going to get anyway. Because even if I got what I wanted, all I'm going to have as a memory is a picture. So, I mean, all I'm missing out on is a few hours of actually being there. But you're going to live a whole life with just the fucking picture. So I spent 50 years with just a picture of the Grand Canyon, okay? It's 50 years. All I had is a picture. That's all I got as a memory. I'm just saying that's how it works. So there's no point in worrying about actually having a life. Just make sure you can shove the right pictures into your head and you'll be just fine in terms of actualizing some desire to have something. Okay. So I'm just saying that yes, you can, you can't fantasy your evening dinner, right? Because hunger's not going to go away, because you have a fantasy of eating food. But these other desires will go, they will be moderatable, okay? Because you can recreate the circumstance. You can create the illusion. So, and people do this all the time with their fantasies and their fetishes. They dress up, they do silly things. All of that is just a way of helping their illusion. But the straighter line is just to go with the illusion. Don't even bother, with all the little trappings that really won't make any difference. It's just what's in your head. And like I said, part of that will, there's so many things where, the more you know, the less interested you become in the reality anyway, because it is so noisy and smelly, and there's mosquitoes, and, there's always some kind of crap that just taint it. Just create it in your head. It's cheaper, easier, and all of that crap. Well, anyway, so look, I made videos talking about how this is the dilemma, this is the straightest line to it, is just to create people who you're not going to be able to reconstruct them. It's not, pedophiles aren't pedophiles on purpose. Okay, they didn't say as a kid, I desire reasonable sexual interactions with reasonably competent adults, but now I want to become a child molester. No, that's not what they did. Okay, that's not how it happened. And my argument is just recognize that is a kind of crime that is a lot more sympathetic, okay, in terms of the character, than shoplifter or somebody who steals for money or some other thing where it's just so obvious that all they did was say you're not worth it. They didn't say, they didn't have any need to do anything that was a real desire, a real compulsion. They just wanted a shortcut to their own comfort. And so anyway, so that's all. But that's, so there was just nothing in the video to indicate I have any sympathy with perpetrators. And yet, these people will argue and imply that I said or did something to aid in comfort, okay? When explicitly in the videos, I'm reacting to somebody who wished to lower the age of consent. They were making an argument that the age of consent should be lowered, and I was making exactly the opposite argument, that if anything, it should be raised, because it is such a precious thing. Your sexual identity is so fuck-upable, and it really matters what kind of experiences you have in your maturation, what kind of success you'll have in your future life in being satisfied in your sex life. So it's really important that children not be fucked with, and yet I'm somehow a defender of the perpetrators, and it's just such a cheat. And you're just saying, yeah, no, people shouldn't be allowed to cheat like that. And so part of me says, okay, I should fight because, maybe I should try to get him arrested or get him fucked up. Maybe I should try to, out him and dox him and do all this shit. but no, I know I can't do that. Okay, two wrongs don't make a right. But it should be made right. Okay, that's the point. And so the point is it sits there and it irritates, you know. But you say, don't scratch the itch. You know, don't bother, because there's no way to do it without it just making the environment more toxic and worse. And those are the balances. That's what makes this whole conflict so difficult, is that the people have now made it expensive. It's not really about the arguments. It's not about the details and the integrity of the arguments. It's not a fair fight of ideas. It's not a battlefield of ideas. It's just people out to win through any kind of cheat and yeah, it's just, you know, and it's disgusting that way too many people applaud victory through those cheaty means. So you know, could argue that, you know, a lot of this has to do with the, you know, there's lots of constitutional arguments that could be made. You know, all these cops and all these, you know, government employees who don't want to be videoed, all this bullshit, and you're just saying none of this crap pulled by these government employees, these public servants, shit, it really has gotten way out of control. And it's like, how do they get defended? And you're just saying, how many people are there that are friends and family of the cops? I mean, how are there people defending this bullshit? You know, some of the bullshit is just so outrageously bullshit, and there's still going to be people show up to defend it. And you're just like, how the fuck is that possible? And that's a real danger sign, in sense of that's a real destruction of civilization. You know, there's a ton of people who've been outed, caught being crooks and shysters and connivers, and they get reelected. And you're just like, what the fuck? You can't find anybody better than that? You know, you know, and it's just so. I mean, we're allowing crime to pay, and pay very well, and you know, that's cultural suicide. And like I said, anybody who's defending anything but a nice fair fight is part of the problem, not part of the solution, and such. Alright, so yeah, I'll take a pause and see if there's some summing up to do or something. I'll do something. Yeah, as often happens, my brain, you know, drifts into some kind of personal, you know, event or analogy or circumstance, because that's what your brain does. It takes the idea and it goes through your reservoir of knowledge, and your reservoir of knowledge is really a bunch of personal experiences, little photographs and such. So anyway, so, you know, there's some, let's just say there's a punky kid, okay, here, and, you know, he's shit mouth, a little rotten piece of crap in most respects. And then today, so quite dislikable, and just villainous almost. You're just saying this can't be worth anything. It's not going to grow up to be anything but a shithead. Well, today I saw him, and he had a little pouch with a little kitten, you know, little yellow kitten. You know, and you know. Now that's in my brain. It's a photograph. My brain said, "What?" You know, and it's such a cheat for me, right? Because as soon as somebody's nice to a cat, I have to give them, you know, my brain, emotionally, I give them a thumbs up. You know, good human, being nice to cat. You know, and it's like a whole bunch of animosity or resentments or irritations, just kind of, well, I can let all that, I can let this slide, and all the other shit slide, in terms of the crap I've heard him say, or the bullshit, you know, being a little thuggy kid. Yeah, because, oh yeah, you know, he's being nice to a cat. You know, and so that's my, you know, another emotional cheat. Now, I'd say it's not all bad. I'm just saying that obviously you could have a philosophical conversation about, abusing animals, in the sense of animals shouldn't be our comfort mechanisms. We shouldn't be exploiting them for the purpose of our comfort and satisfaction, because their lives are dangerous, and just like us, they're going to get ground up, and you have to make sure that their voyage through this experience is as graceful as possible. And you certainly don't want to encourage anybody to make more of them and any of that kind of crap. So it does get, that's a whole subject. I'm just talking about the visceral reaction to the image, and my emotional reaction, and how, there's obviously, you can always question your bias, and that's the difficult part. The part I'm saying, even though I have this knowledge, okay, that I'm just a computing device and I'm just calculating, I can see where the calculations are polluted by, the less than smart part of the brain and the smart part, and the unsmart part has the visceral power. It can, squeeze your nuts. Okay, the intellectual part, very weak grip, very, very weak. And but this intellectual part is persistent. It'll keep nagging and nagging and nagging and nagging. So that's its only power, is that it's never shuts up in a way. Once you get it going, it'll just keep nagging and nagging and nagging. And that's the kind of unpleasant tug of war I find life to be. Is as you get smarter and smarter, your brain gets to be more of a naggy pain in the ass. But the only thing redeeming is that your monkey admires the integrity of your intelligence, admires that it will cling to the truth. And so you feel good about the fact that you feel like shit, which doesn't make much sense. But it actually, that's the only way I can describe it. Yeah. That you've had to endure the pain of your contemplation, the fact that you gave it time, that you did think about it, that you did have some kind of sincere empathy or sympathy, some sort of sincere devotion to a principle, and again, you feel proud of that. But these are all, this is the tricky double-edgedness of the knife, and that you just can't push it into anything without cutting your own fingers off. So anyway, enough of a video and such. So yeah, I don't know what the real takeaway is. It's what the title is going to be. Don't really conflict. Yeah, I'll just make up one-word titles, right? Because it's really just about this, the idea that it shouldn't exist in the first place, because frankly the facts of life are so obvious, and the facts of most, in some sense, circumstances are also not that hard to find. The truth that it is a multiplayer game, and that the only thing that's really going to matter is what is your net effect on all of sentience. That's it. That's the only standard by which your life can be reasonably judged, is how did you leave the place? Better off or worse off? Did you create a future where more people suffered or less people suffered? Our animals, more or less brains, were in distress and pain. That's all it's going to, that's it. You're either a winner or a loser by that standard. There really isn't anything else that's relevant. That's it. So anyway, yeah. Anyway, Yeah, so anyway, that's today's video, yeah. And I'm just, like I said, these last 4 videos I think have been, pretty good in putting the order, so, in spelling out all the subjects that really matter. And the rest is just putting that into some presentation that's more persuasive. I don't know, dress it up better. Anyway, so you have to, you have to suck people in first. So maybe you have to pet a kitten, Then I could pet a puppy, and I could pet a cockroach. I could just pet everything, and eventually I'll find the thing that makes you say, "Oh, he's on my side." And then once you think and understand I'm on your side, and we just disagree over something, then we can just argue the disagreements, and we don't have to do this hostility thing. All right, the factual disagreements. And again, I just don't see any room for any debate on most of the facts. It doesn't take 25 times the fuel to go 5 times as fast. Oh, physics actually says that. I mean, it's so stupid, and you're saying, why do they persist in defending physics that says things that aren't true? And then everybody respects it, like, whoa, physicists are smart. God, they're really myopic. They have blind sides all over the place. They know how to do some math, and that's all they know, frankly. The concepts, they miss the point altogether. Alright, anyway, enough of that. So, till the next time, and such, and so forth, and whatnot. So yeah, just try to, think. The argument is look, just try to think your way out of stuff. Don't react your way out, impulsively. Think. And the longer you think, the more possible it is for you to extract yourself from stupid. You can at least eliminate stupid, okay, as a possible action if you do some thinking. Alright, till the next time, and such, and so forth, and whatnot.